Senior editor Paul J. discusses the reality of life on the ground in Iraq with Pepe Escobar, correspondent for The Real News and columnist for the Asia Times Online. Pepe is also the author of Globalstan and the soon-to-be-published Red Zone Blues, a book based on his reportage covering Baghdad.
It is Iraq's prime minister who Warner says needs to be shaken up. The senator said this redeployment would show them
the Maliki government has let down the U.S. forces and to extend his own Iraqi forces.
The Iraqi government will become more precarious over the next 6 to 12 months.
Bush's visit to Iraq takes place at a time when the Maliki government is under attack from every quarter. There's a real question of whether it's going to be able to continue or not. Its connections with Iran, he makes a statement in Syria where Maliki says we can find other friends. After Bush threatens him, he threatens back. What's the fate of this government, and is anybody in control of this process?
Nobody is in control of this process, and this government is finished. In fact, it has been finished for a few months now. First of all, we have to remember that the Americans always control who is the puppet tyrant at the Green Zone. He's not ruling over Iraq. He's ruling relatively over the Green Zone. It's much easier, to give you an idea, to get to Maliki's palace inside the Green Zone than to the American embassy inside the Green Zone as well. You have to cross like 5 checkpoints to get to Maliki and probably more than 10 to get to the American embassy. But the thing is, the Green Zone does not rule Baghdad and does not rule Iraq. People in Iraq are completely oblivious of the central government. What we have in Iraq is regional warlords, like we have in Afghanistan, controlling vast swathes of the country. So nobody is in control. We can say that the Mahdi army is in control of Sadr City, which is practically half of the population of Baghdad, on the eastern side of the Tigris. We can say that the Supreme Islamic Council of Iraq is in control of basically Najaf and parts of Kufa and the south. And in the south itself, we have 3 different Shiite factions fighting for power. In Basra, for instance, after the British departed, we have the Fadila party, who controls the oil money, basically. We have the Mahdi army, which controls the police. And we have the Badr organization that controls intelligence. So as we can see, it's fragmented all over the country. Nobody controls Baghdad, and the Americans control basically the road from the airport to the Green Zone, which was exactly what was happening 6, 8 months, or last year, for that matter.
So what comes after the Maliki government? If it's finished, which everybody seems ready to kill it off, what's next?
Well, for the Americans, what they really need is a puppet like a Hamid. They need a Hamid Karzai with Saddam Hussein's mustache, basically. It's very hard to find. There is one character that suits this profile. It's Iyad Allawi, which was the first interim prime minister. No wonder Mr. Allawi is paying $300,000 a year to a Washington PR firm to make his case to Washington lobbyists, as if Iraqi needed another Iraqi lobbyist in Washington. You know, the thing is, Allawi could make the oil law pass, which is the basic benchmark that interests the Bush administration. Basically, the oil law is the denationalization of the Iraqi oil industry, which was nationalized by Saddam Hussein in 1972. They want to revert all this. They want PSAs, production sharing agreements, basically with Anglo-American big oil, and with some French thrown in, like Total from France is very much interested if they can get a piece of the pie as well. I'm not so sure about the Chinese, because they might be excluded if the Americans were running the show in this case. But the oil law basically is a denationalization process. It's vigorously opposed by the Iraqi oil unions, who threaten a mutiny if it's passed.
These are the workers' unions.
The workers' unions, exactly. It was conceived in Washington, was redacted with World Bank and IMF approval. It was shown to American senators and congressmen, and then it was shown to parliamentarians in Iraq. Those who actually read it were absolutely horrified. At least 50% of the parliamentarians are already against the law, even if they haven't read it. So there's no chance of this law being approved under a Maliki government. So from the point of view of the Bush administration, what they need is a pliable guy who passes the law. It could be Alawi, which is a former CIA asset, a former interim prime minister, recognized by the Iraqis themselves as Saddam without a mustache. This means he's a very, very tough guy. And part of his plan, in fact, is to install a military curfew and a state of siege practically for at least 2 years to restore security. So we would have Iraq still even more configured as an enormous gulag, and Alawi in these conditions could pass the oil law.